Before we start, I just want to thank everybody for helping look after Bhikkhu Bodhi. It was delightful having him here, but he really enjoyed his stay, his time here. It's good. People, everybody plugged in. It's kind of easy to look after. It's a delightful being. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhang dhammang sanghang namassami. Namatu Acharya Sa. So this next bit is called, you have to stop to keep up. Formal entry into the monastic order is effected through the ceremony of Upasampada. The ceremony is presided over by a senior monk, designated the Upachaya or preceptor, who is empowered to receive the new monk into the Sangha and is required to take responsibility for his welfare and training. The relationship between the preceptor and his disciple is modeled on that of father and son. Luang Por became a preceptor in 1975, and over the next 6 years, 14 non-Thais entered the Sangha with him as their preceptor. There's a footnote on this. 7 of these monks remain in robes in 2017. Munindo, Bodhipalo, Amaro, Jnanadhammo, Jayasaro, Vajiro, K. Manando. At the conclusion of an ordination ceremony for Western monks, Luang Por would usually take the opportunity of this gathering of the Western Sangha to give a Dhamma talk, which would encompass the whole monastic training, from its most basic foundations to the ultimate goal of the holy life. On one such occasion, he began, as was his custom, by emphasizing the importance of living together in harmony, of how important it was that the foreign monks related to each other according to the conventions laid down in the Vinaya. He instructed them that, as a group of samanas, they should put behind them all consciousness of different skin color, language, and culture, and look on each other with kindness and respect, as companions in the holy life. They should train themselves in speaking to each other mindfully. There's a quote, "If any problem comes up in the group, then speak about it in a skillful way. I see it like this. I feel like this." And then listen to what the other person has to say. The Western monk should learn to listen with an open mind, both to the words of others and to their own thoughts. When a view or opinion arose in their mind, they should be aware of it as simply that. A view, an opinion, and remind themselves that, as yet, they did not, in fact, know whether it accurately reflected the truth of things. The mind was the measure of the effectiveness of their practice. If they were experiencing mental suffering, that meant that they had deviated from the Dhamma and allowed craving to arise. In community life, devotion to the Dhamma and Vinaya would dissolve all sense of conflict and bring a feeling of unity in diversity. Luang Por seemed to share the widespread concern in Thailand at that time that Buddhism was undergoing a sharp decline. He lamented the fact that so many people were going to monasteries merely in search of protective amulets or to be sprinkled with holy water. He opined that the true Dhamma is disappearing. It's seldom seen. Few people are practicing. The Westerners seemed like a breath of fresh air. The sacrifices they had made to spend their lives as monks in the forest gave new inspiration to many people. This is a quote. So with the world in its present state, I feel that for all of you to have come from so many countries, to join in the training here is a singular thing. It's uplifting for the lay people to see you coming from abroad to become monks, and to see that you can eat sticky rice, you can speak Thai, you can speak Lao, that you're able to endure life in such a poor and backward place. That's why, when I went to London, I said to people there that people come to Wat Pah Pong for a doctorate in Buddhism. What I mean by that is that you come here intent on genuine transformation. To me, it's as if all of you have died and then been reborn. Everything here is different from your former life. You have had to get used to the weather, the food, all kinds of things. In order to become monks, you have strived to overcome all these obstacles, including learning the language and chanting for the ordination ceremony. Your efforts are inspiring. Nevertheless, he cautioned them, the ordination ceremony was simply a convention. It didn't, in itself, change them for the better. And it should be remembered that, ultimately, all such forms were empty. So quote again. Once you've taken the robe as a monk or a novice, you're still the same person as you were before. Postulant, novice, monk, it's all the same person. So don't have ideas about becoming anything. The things we are practicing with are, at every stage, the same old things. Truly speaking, there are no Thais and no Westerners here at all. They're just the elements of earth, water, fire, and air. Nothing has any intrinsic existence. There are merely the conventions that we have created. The most important thing was the training of the mind. Quote again. Don't follow after your thoughts. Try to keep looking at your mind. Through my own reflections, I've come to see that things which run in a circle are the fastest of all. You can't keep up with them. You have to just sit there calmly and watch them run. Don't run with them. When they come to entice you, don't get up from your seat. And then when your mind stops, you'll become aware of many different things. If you run after your thoughts, you won't be able to keep up with them. But if you stop, then you will. It's strange. This applies to all mind objects, which are just the way they are, in accordance with causes and conditions. Transcending the world required an understanding of what, quote-unquote, the world truly was, and what it meant to be, quote, born into the world, unquote. This is a quote. Wherever there is a cause, there will be a result. It is the way of the world. There are causes and results. There is birth and there is death. There is pleasure and there is pain. There is love and there is hate. The existence of all these things is called the world. Identification with any of these phenomena was the profound meaning of birth. Birth formed the cause for a proliferation of conditions, and then, inevitably, death. Birth and death were inseparable, he said. Every single person who dies has experienced birth. To determine the middle way of practice, it was necessary to bear the end in mind. This quote. The highest teaching of the Buddha is to put things down. Take hold of them and then put them down. Pick them up to see what they are, and when you know, then lay them down again. In the end, that's the way it has to be with everything. You have to put it all down. When you truly know all the things in your mind, then you put them down as a matter of course. If you don't, and it's, this is mine, that is mine, then you've got it wrong. If you really understand something, then you put it down. The teachings of the Buddha mean an end without remainder. Whatever there is must be brought to a conclusion, to a complete end. The term kinasavo, this is an epithet for an arahant. The term kinasavo means one who has come to an end of outflows. And outflows in the Pali is asava, effluents, fermentations, defilements of the mind which obstruct liberation. The traditional list includes 4: sensuality, views, becoming, and ignorance. Know the good as good, and then put it down. Know evil as evil, and then put it down. Eventually, the teachings lead to an ending. Knowing the cause, you lay down the cause. Knowing the effect, you lay down the effect. So having done that, then where do you dwell? Beyond cause and effect, beyond birth and death. You abide there, where things are concluded, where things have come to an end. There is nothing there. The mind is at peace in the absence of cause and effect, birth and death, pleasure and pain. In that peace, there is no cause and effect because the mind has gone beyond them. It is our ultimate aim in practice. The Buddha taught just this. What remains is for us to travel to that point. The Buddha has provided a boat and oars and left them for us to make use of. If we start to row, then the boat will move. If we don't, then the boat will remain motionless. The Buddha is the one who tells us what's what. He cannot do the practice for us. That is our responsibility. So that's the end of that chapter on From Distant Lands.
Sadhu, 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 anumodami.
Any questions?
Luang Por. Yeah. You talk about the world in terms of, to my memory, like gain and loss, and those.
Yeah, pleasure, pain.
Yeah. I'm wondering if you could speak on how kind of approach those things in practice, because for me, one thing I found, it's like I would try to like make it concrete, like what is praise, what is blame, but then I got the sense that maybe it's the sense of being praised, the sense of being blamed.
Well, yeah, I mean, there is a subjective element to it, which then also has to be reflected on and sort of see, well, how much reality is actually there. Sometimes think you're being praised, and really it's some deluded idea, and you're actually being criticized. Or the opposite as well, where somebody says something kind, and one and trying to encourage, and then one is so sort of wrapped up in oneself that one takes it as some kind of criticism. So that and then of course there's overt praise and there's overt blame. So there's all the permutations. And what's the mind spinning out at any given time? How grounded in reality is it? Also, the Buddha himself, when those are called worldly Dhammas, and those are, can be, say, to a certain degree, not so concrete, but more subjective. But the Buddha himself, when asked what the world was, it's the world is basically sight, sound, smell, taste, touch, objects of mind. That's what the world is. It's the sense of making a concrete, real world out there is what we do, but it's something that is constructed through sense data.
In the beginning, Ajahn Chah's advice to the Western monks about how to talk to each other. It's interesting that it's very similar to advice that like Western self-help books give. But he didn't read those, obviously. It was his own discernment as to what would be useful for these people. So that's interesting.
Well, it's kind of useful for human beings.
Yeah.
And Thais are quite skilled in human. Their social interactions are quite. They're attuned, and Ajahn Chah in particular was quite. In terms of one who was attuned, Ajahn Chah was tuned in. Okay, yeah, why don't we just go over and begin puja. And let's...
Can I ask a quick question?
Yeah, sure.
That attunement that you're just talking about,
Hmm?
the attunement you're talking about, to when I was there, I noticed it seemed like a lot of families still lived pretty close to each other, at least in the more kind of rural parts. Do you think that's part of the reason why?
Some families live.
Yeah.
Everybody lives close together. It's really, it's the especially in the village structure. And to a certain degree, even in the cities, there's a certain closeness. Okay, Jeet, you're in your family. How many family members are sort of close by with your parents? And
we live in a very small 2-level. My father had the shop downstairs selling watches, and wristwatches, and it's a row of houses.
Yeah.
20 of them together, there's no privacy. I grew up and I hear the chanting the next door. The guy will be chanting in the morning and night. And there's a hole in it. I always go and look. And they always, you can't shut the door. They're like, hello, hello, just everything.
Yeah, it was like I remember taking Thai monks to England as senior Thai monks and going to England, and they're sort of, we take them to see the sights in London or in England and the country, and they said, where are all the people? I thought this was a populated country, because nothing happens on the streets in the same way that it does in Thailand. Everything's sort of out in the open, out in the streets. Everybody's mixing, so that it's such a social culture, both in terms of family as well as in social structures and even in urban, and then even more so in the village. Like in village structure, like if you if you ask somebody, how many people in your family? Well, it depends on what day it was to know how many people may or may not be there. Because family was the definition of family is really really quite broad, and it's sort of, you got parents and uncles and aunts and children and cousins, but then you got other people who are somewhat related and or who are friends of someone related, and they're and it's all family. And isn't it true? And even just in the way that you speak with each other, your terms of address, unless you're incredibly crass, it's always in terms of if somebody's older than you, then that's your elder sister, elder brother. If they're somewhat more older, then their uncle, and if they're younger, then they're younger. You just like no. I mean, it's just like a younger brother, younger sister. So your terms of address are familial, and so there's a intrinsic sense of this social cohesion. That's very interesting, and very different than kind of individuals in American society who are autonomous and free. Independent.
When you say the terms of address are familiar, that would be even for strangers, just like in general?
Yeah. Even if it's somebody who's a stranger, and they're a bit older than you, you wouldn't just say, "Hey, you." It would be, elder brother, elder sister, P. Oh, no. It's sort of like it's addressing them, and it's either elder or younger. And or if it's somebody who's quite a bit older, it's a much more like uncle or aunt you would address them as.
Do you think does that translate for the Thai people who have that background? I can see that it kind of fosters a much more healthier kind of a sense of self and relationship, and that can translate quite well into kind of the basics of Dhamma practice and generosity and respect.
Yeah, basics of human existence. We're pretty good at it.
Yeah. So do you think it's just that with kind of like modernization and people just living in isolation and things like that, and then
definitely there is a modern element component that is but it's also a social ideal, like an ideal. Just as I was saying, like an ideal person in America is somebody who is, strong, independent, stand on their own 2 feet, and that's your idealization of somebody who. Whereas, say, an ideal person in Thai culture is somebody who is harmonious and is a pleasant person to navigate around.
Luang Por, as an Ajahn, do you use those terms as well, as like uncle or elder, or is it a little different?
As a monk, no, it's all different. I mean, it's very. I mean, it's. I mean, on one level, it's it's just very stylized, and and it is just a convention. But yeah, as a monk, then you're sort of out of the. You're kind of out of the social structure, which is very interesting as well in the sense of, like, one of the aspects of, say, like of, I think I've mentioned it fairly recently, of, say, like of gender. There's like male gender, female gender, and then religious seeker gender or monastic gender. It's a different gender. And then as a monastic, then there's certain protocols in terms of address that you don't speak in a really familiar way, unless you're quite old as a monk. Like I can get away with it.
I think you can get away with a lot of things in Thailand.
But it's also, I mean, it's like it's more like a term of warmth and affection that is coming from somebody who's quite senior as a monastic.
Yeah, I grew up in a small Chinese town, very beautiful town. Everybody, I heard everybody calling, friend and like somebody, and people who lives there, sister.
Yeah.
Everybody J,
Yeah.
Sister, I was J.
Yeah.
And then they start calling me J. It's just natural.
Yeah.
J.
Yeah.
It's very